Jai Shri Ram. My name is Amrita Tiwari, and I'm the chair of Damru Foundation International. Today, I have a very interesting guest sitting here next to me, Dr. Alok Sharma, who is a neurosurgeon. Dr. Alok Sharma, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate that you could make time for us at such short notice.
Thank you. It's a privilege and a pleasure to be in this wonderful country.
Thank you. So, Dr. Sharma, you have done some very significant research. Um, can you tell us something about this? And before we start, a quick introduction of yourself.
So, I'm basically a neurosurgeon. My whole life, I've done conventional neurosurgery, which is operating on brain tumors, vascular conditions, spinal conditions, accidents, etc. And very early on my career, I realized that despite all the surgery, once there was a damage to the nervous system, which is the brain and spinal cord, there was no medicine that could treat that. There was no surgical repair we could do. So once there was a damage, the damage seemed to remain permanent. And so very early on in my career, I decided to focus on what is called neuroregeneration. How do we restore function to the nervous system? And as part of that, I entered the field of regenerative medicine, where using cells, stem cells, we can actually repair damage to the nervous system. So the latter part of my surgical career became more focused on regenerative medicine, how to restore function to adults and children who have damage to the nervous system.
That's quite remarkable, actually, because when I was in school, I learned that nerve tissue cannot be repaired,
Exactly.
cannot regenerate, and it cannot even multiply. So, how come you chose to study this?
So it happened very early on in my career when I was a medical student. I once came across somebody with a spinal cord injury. And while taking the rounds, I asked the senior doctors, Doctor, why can't we help this patient? And the doctor actually said, well, nothing can be done for this patient. He could have died. And in that moment, my eyes met the eyes of the patient. This was a young patient with a spinal cord injury who was paralyzed. And in that moment, I realized my calling, that my life would be dedicated to this cause. Early on in my career, everybody thought that this is something impossible. But I've worked over 30 years now. I joined the faculty at the medical college, the Lokmanya Tilak Municipal Hospital, where from being lecturer, I became the professor and head of department. I was head of department till last year. And then I actually then started my own hospital where we focus exclusively on regeneration. So this is the new frontier in medicine. This is something which is completely pioneering and path-breaking. And because of this, conditions that were earlier considered incurable, we are now able to treat.
So, how did you find out?
Yeah, so it came out of a lot of reading and study of literature. And I found that different people in different parts of the world had come up with this idea that possibly we could do what is called biological healing. And then in 1998, um, stem cells from the embryo were discovered in America. And what I did was that I actually went to Denver, Colorado, where they were using fetal stem cells for, trying to treat Parkinson's disease. And there I learned how these cells are to be grown. And then I came back to the medical college in India, and for 10 years, from 1998 to 2008, I did fundamental research in the laboratory using tissues, working with animals. And it took 10 years for us to study this in the laboratory and then come up with the treatment that I've come up with. So there was a very solid research, basic science foundation to the work that we are now doing.
What is autism actually?
So, autism is basically what we call a neurodevelopmental disorder, which means the developing brain, a child's brain which is developing, that gets actually disordered. Part of it becomes non functional or inactive. And because of that, these children have a set of syndromes. Basically, one is that they aren't able to communicate. Very often, their speech is affected. They have various problems with social interactions, and they have several repetitive behavioral issues. Now, this combination makes them unable to live independent lives. They aren't able to go through the normal education system, and that's why they are dependent on specialized care, both from therapists, caregivers, and parents. So, this is what autism is. Now, what we did, which was original, which nobody had done in the world before, is we did special brain scans called PET-CT scans, which actually looked at the brains of these children and identified which parts of the brain were not working. Okay, and this is now published in a very prestigious paper, the World Journal of Nuclear Medicine, where we've actually shown in autism which parts are not working. But interestingly, when we were doing our research, we also found that in these children, there are some parts of the brain that are working more than others. Okay, and that accounts for the special abilities they have in them. So far, the world looked at what these children cannot do, that they cannot speak, they cannot read and write, they cannot have an education. What we have shown is their special abilities, that they have skills and abilities that our regular neurotypical people don't have. You may be aware that the world's richest man today, Elon Musk, actually had autism. He talks about his autism. And yet, here is a man who's not just the world's richest man, he changed the world for the better. A lot of people had thought of reducing the dependency on carbon based fuels for vehicles. But he was somebody who actually converted that idea to reality through his company Tesla. And because of him today, car makers all over the world are now shifting to uh, non-fuel based ways of driving. So these people have these special abilities. Albert Einstein, who was one of the world's greatest scientists, also was believed to have autism. And some of our greatest tech geniuses, they have had some amount of either ADHD or autism. So what we have done is we are now telling the world, don't just look at what they can't do, look at what they can do. I can take this cup and, I can say it's half full and you can say it's half empty, and we both are correct. We have shifted the focus to the half full, and we are now saying, look at what these children can do that is productive, that can move the human race forward. In fact, not just me, but several people are actually talking of autism as being the next step in human evolution. Our brain is now evolving to do things that many of us can't do. For example, these children are masters at non-verbal communication. For us, communication is only talking, but they communicate sometimes non-verbally. And maybe that's the future of mankind, when we'll be able to communicate through non-verbal means. So, this is the excitement in the research that we have done.
What are some typical things that children who are suffering with the autism spectrum display? How can you recognize children like that?
Among the first thing is that they have, their comprehension first. What you tell them, they sometimes are not able to understand that. Then they don't, so because of that, they aren't able to follow your commands. You tell them to do something, they aren't able to do it, or they are slower in doing it. The most important thing that stands out is speech. So whereas other children start talking by particular years, their speech doesn't come, or if it comes, it is just a few words. So speech is one of the classic ways of picking it up. Next, they have certain repetitive behaviors. So it could be flapping, or it could be different activities that they do, which is a repetitive behavior. This is a little peculiar. Sometimes they walk on their toes. They have a different way of walking. Then also they have these behavioral things. Small things can get them upset, that can make them aggressive, and they will sometimes do things that other neurotypical kids will not do. So this combination of communication, speech problems, repetitive behaviors, and also socially, they aren't able to integrate. They don't play as well with children of their own age. So their social interaction is also a little less. They will suddenly have these meltdowns. They're in the middle of something, and then suddenly they will, you know, have a what we refer to as a meltdown. So these are some of the peculiar traits that we notice. And in addition to this, of course, they aren't able to manage with the education. So if you put them in a school, their reading, their writing abilities and skills are not appropriate to their age. So this is a little combination of things that points towards the child being on the autism spectrum.
So, with regards to the treatment, can you tell us how this treatment goes? What happens in the treatment?
So what we do now is what is called regenerative medicine, and we take cells from the body. So what we do is we take a needle, we put it into the pelvic bone, which is right here, and take out the liquid from the bone, which is called bone marrow. All right. It's a simple 15-minute procedure. Once we've taken out this bone marrow, we take it to our laboratory. There we sort of filter it, separate the stem cells from it, and then these stem cells are then injected with through a simple needle into the lower back, into what is called the spinal fluid. And the spinal fluid then takes it to the brain. So the beauty of this procedure is there is no surgery, there is no cutting, there is no stitching. It's just two needle pricks. With one we take out, with one needle we put back. And what are we putting back in the child? Cells taken from the child itself. So this is called autologous cell transplant. And we have treated now a total of almost 15,000 patients, of which 4,500 are children with autism, another 3,500 are children with cerebral palsy, and we have treated several other conditions like intellectual disability, muscular dystrophy. In adults, we have treated people with stroke, people with dementia, and this is now becoming an increasing problem as we are having an aging population. A lot of patients are having dementia and Alzheimer's, so we're able to treat that as well. And we are able to treat people with a spinal cord injury who are paralyzed. So this is the excitement of this treatment, that we are able to repair damage which was not repairable with either any medicine before or any surgical procedure before. What happens is in the body, whenever any part is damaged, that part releases certain chemicals, okay, which the stem cells get attracted to. So it is the damaged parts of the brain that pull the stem cells towards them. The parts that are not damaged, they have no interest in the stem cells. So they just let the stem cells go by. But the ones which are damaged actually pull the stem cells towards it. In autism, like I mentioned before, we have identified which parts are damaged. And what we find is when we inject the cells, those parts start getting repaired. Once they start getting repaired, slowly and progressively the child improves. First thing what we have noticed is that the comprehension and understanding of the child improves. So the child becomes more responsive, more understanding to commands. Gradually, then the behavioral issues start improving. After that, their ability to read and write and their educational skills start improving. And finally, their speech improves. So once all this happens, then what we have seen is in our children who are earlier in special schools are now able to shift to normal schools. Our children who weren't able to read and write are able to read and write. Because their speech comes back, they now get integrated into mainstream society. And several of the behavioral issues they have, which can be sometimes aggressive behavior or demanding behavior, all of these things slowly and gradually go away. The thing about cell or stem cell therapy is the improvements don't come suddenly. They come gradually. So this is it's referred to as an organic improvement. Like when you take a drug, let's say you have a headache and I give you an analgesic, your headache will go away immediately. There is a beginning, there's a short action, and there is an end. Whereas stem cells are like seeds. When you put seeds in the soil, there is an organic growth. First, the roots take, then the stem comes out of the seed. So the first thing that comes out is a stem. The word stem cell comes from that stem. And then there are branches, and there are leaves, and then there are flowers, and there are fruit. So this is an organic process. Cells or stem cells actually work exactly like that. It's an organic repair. And over a period of several months, the improvements continue till a point is reached when our children are able to lead independent lives.
Is it a painful procedure?
So it's not painful at all, because what we do is the whole procedure involves two needle pricks. What we do is we give the child sedation. So the child is sleeping, is completely not aware of what is going on, and we give local anesthesia. And when we give local anesthesia, they feel no pain. Okay. The same thing we do when we aspirate the bone marrow, the same thing we do when we inject the cells or stem cells. So it's not painful to the child during the procedure, After the procedure for a day or so, the child may have a little pain at the back at the injection site, but it's just for a day or so. The recovery time is almost immediate, so all we recommend is a day's rest. For the day we do the procedure in the morning, they just rest for one day, that's day. From the next day morning onwards, they are back to normal. So we have a very vigorous rehabilitation program, which consists of speech therapy and occupational therapy and ABA, psychological counseling, special education. So all of this starts from the very next day. So the child is fully recovered the next day morning.
What other things can be done for the children so they can improve their life?
The brain is like a computer. A computer's got hardware and a computer's got software. Now, stem cell only repairs the hardware, but we have to put software in there as well. So we believe that a comprehensive rehabilitation program, which includes all the things I just mentioned, from occupational therapy, speech therapy, psychological therapy, special education, all of these are very important in the post stem cell period, so that the repaired brain, the repaired hardware, now has appropriate software. Now, in addition to this, over the last few years, uh, as our research is delving deeper into the causations, the mechanisms of autism, we now find that there are some other treatments which are adding value. One of them is hyperbaric oxygen therapy, which is oxygen which is given under pressure. In addition to this, we use something called ozone therapy. Oxygen is O2, two molecules. Ozone is O3. It's like a superactivated oxygen. Along with this, we are finding that micronutrient supplementation, because we are finding a lot of our children have low levels of vitamin D. They have various problems with the B complex vitamins. So we find that correcting that is also helping. In addition, one important connection we've noticed is between the gut and the brain. So what we do is we do a very detailed evaluation, a gut microbiome test, which tells us exactly what are the issues in the gut. Very often they have different types of infections in the gut. Very often they are fungal infections. Sometimes they are very strong bacterial or viral infections. Then they have a deficiency of certain chemicals and hormones in the gut. So each child is different, and it is based on what diet they have been exposed to, where they are living, and several other issues. So each child has a different gut problem, but they almost all have gut problems. And these require targeted therapy. For example, a fungal infection requires a different set of medicines as compared to a bacterial infection, as compared to a viral infection. We use a combination of pre and postbiotics, we use a combination of vitamins. So each treatment is individualized to the child, and it is not one size fits all. Diet plays an extremely important role, because we found that certain diets, like for example, if they have anything that is sugar and carbohydrate based, their behavioral issues get exacerbated. So one of the things that we suggest over here is to have gluten free, casein free diets. We recommend a ketogenic diet, and we found that just focusing on the diet, avoiding some of the high sugar carbohydrate things, this plays a very, very important role. Then there are some other things which have been recommended. For example, there's a lot of work that shows that fresh camel milk is very useful. Just one of the many. There are actually several recommendations on this. So there are various specific diets that do help these children. So diet plays an extremely important role. This diet is based on what we find from the gut microbiome test, and so specific diets are advised to the children. Again, this is different for each child. So this is what is happening today in the world of autism. Earlier it was, you were diagnosed and you were just told to take rehabilitation or special education. And now we are finding there are several small things which have to be individualized. Each child has to be looked upon as different individual, just like all of us are different individuals. You are very different from me, and I'm different from you in my body composition, emotion, psychological state. Likewise, each child is different. And today the focus is individualized, personalized medicine. Okay, you take each child, understand through imaging what is happening to the brain, understand what is happening to the biochemistry, what are their vitamin and nutrient levels, understand what is happening to their gut, and then individualize the treatment. With this, we are getting better results than we were getting before, and we're also getting faster results. And then when we correct that, we are finding that this whole combination of cell stem cell therapy, comprehensive rehab, and the other treatments which are referred to as integrative therapy, this combination is giving us the best results.
Apart from the treatment methods that you've just described, we have spoken about the stem cell therapy and the oxygen therapy. Are there any other things that people can do at home to improve the condition of these children?
So this is, I think, the single most important question you've asked me, because we believe that the family has the most important role to play in a child on the autism spectrum. Now, this is what we have found. So we've treated now 4,500 children on the autism spectrum, and we found some children have done much better than others. And when we looked at them, we found the first thing that we found is that in the children who've done very well, the families have a complete acceptance of their child the way their child is. Okay, they don't feel their child is less than. They don't try to hide their child or protect their child from society. They're out there accepting their child the way the child is, okay, and then doing whatever they take. So acceptance is very, very important. Now, uh, because of this, today actually there is a change in the worldwide view. And earlier, autism was divided into several different subparts, and now they call it autism spectrum disorder. But today, there is a general thinking that we should do away with the word autism and say there are two kind of people: neurotypical people like us and neurodivergent like them. All right. So the word autism is also being thrown because just like somebody can be tall and somebody can be short, somebody can be fair, somebody can be dark. Well, somebody can have a brain like them and somebody can have a brain like us. And why do we only look at what they can't do? They can do things better than us. Very often, they have mathematical abilities way higher than us. They have skill sets that we can't do. So now it's shifting to neurotypical and neurodivergent. Right? So the family also needs to accept that. That's the first thing, acceptance. The second thing we found is when the whole family works as a solid unit. Okay, the whole, they're completely aligned. Just like I, often say, who wins a football match or a cricket match or a hockey match? The better team. The family is the fundamental team. And when the family works in sync with everybody doing whatever they best can, uh, that is when we find that we get the best results. Now, here, what we talk to the parents is that now autism is 4 times more in boys than girls. The incidence in girls is lesser. Uh, so when it comes to boys, it is very, the boys tend to look up to their fathers, and we found that when the fathers play a more proactive role, when the fathers spend more time with the children. So what these children require is time. We give our children everything, but we don't give them the one fundamental thing they need, and that is dedicated time. So we find that when you give time to these children, they tend to do overall much better. So the role of the father, in particular with boys, is very, very important. These boys look up to their fathers for behavior, but they have an emotional connect with the mother. So well, very often if the mother is feeling low or depressed or sad, these children actually go through similar emotions. When the mother is happy, positive, these children also have that kind of emotion. So the mother's emotional state is also very, very important. And what happens is, when we have a special needs child, a child with autism or CP, there's a lot of pressure on the mothers, and there is a lot of literature to show that they go through various forms of depression, anxiety, different emotional states, just with having to cope with having a child with special needs. It's very important that both these are balanced, with the fathers giving time to our special needs children and the mothers having their emotional state be one that is positive, that is energetic, that is looking ahead. And this comes from acceptance, and it comes from the hope that something can be done for the children. So for the families, acceptance and the family working as a unit is extremely important.
Dr. Sharma, how would you explain that the autism spectrum occurs more often with boys rather than with girls? In fact, 4 times more often.
So that actually has to do with the genetics and the chromosome. There is an XX and an XY. So this actually has to go back to something to do with that. Also, the what we've actually found, interestingly, is that after a treatment, girls tend to do better. Okay, so there is some work we had done. I'd done, earlier, when we actually found that the female species of not just humans, but even in animals, tend to recover from neurological injury better and faster. So this we believe has to do with the hormones, estrogen and progesterone. There's a protective effect that comes in. Uh, Talking of the incidence, I'd like to just share with you that the incidence of autism, is increasing over the years in a manner that it's the world is not aware of. So in 2004, I think the incidence was 1 out of 160 children had autism, and then over the last 20 years, it has now become 1 in 36. These are the figures from the US CDC. So if you go to the US Center for Disease Control website, you will see a graphic that shows how from 160 in 2004, every 2 years, it became like 140 and 120 and 100. And, it was 150 3 years ago, and then 140, and now it has become 1 out of 36. Now, if you see the CDC graph over the last 20 years, okay, and if you extrapolate it, in the next few years, it will become 1 in 20, then 1 in 10, maybe 1 in 5. And then what? Okay, the world is not ready for this. We do not have enough rehabilitation centers. We do not have enough special schools. So it's time that government authorities, regulators, health professionals just looked at this raw data that the CDC has projected and just look at what is going to happen. So we need to be prepared as a society. We are just not set up for the massive increase that is happening over the years. Much of it has got to do with modern living. So from the time that this has happened, we've actually noticed there are two, three things that happened at that time. One was uh, the increased incidence of giving certain vaccines. Uh, Now, this is something very controversial. In 1998, Dr. Andrew Wakefield actually published a paper that showed that the preservative in the MMR vaccine was causing autism. Unfortunately, he was very viciously attacked. His paper had to be withdrawn, it was retracted. And of course, after that, they published several papers showing that there is no connection. So the medical field is completely divided as to whether these vaccines are a cause or not. We don't have the evidence out on this, the jury is not out on this yet. However, there is a strong belief that this could be a positive factor. We don't like to emphasize on this too much because this results in very often people stopping all vaccinations. And in some parts of the world, vaccinations have been life saving. There are many diseases which have got eradicated because of vaccines. But I think we should be a little more selective about vaccines. I've had several hundred, not a few, several hundred parents tell me that their child was doing well. They took the MMR vaccine, and then there was a deterioration. Um, Robert Kennedy Jr., who is going to be the next Secretary of Health in America, has been a very strong, activist and proponent of the fact that vaccines not only cause autism, but several other disorders. And now he's going to be in charge of the health of the United States of America. So this is a very controversial field. It's a field that's very difficult to discuss because there are very strong views for and against. Um, so vaccines could be one reason. The other is the use of mobile phones because the massive increase has happened ever since we've had mobile phone with this 3G, 4G, all these things. Because what happens is every mobile phone has a short radiation, just short distance. So if a mother is pregnant and is using a mobile phone, that radiation is enough to damage the developing brain. And there is some work there which actually shows that our brain has a protective system called the blood-brain barrier, which prevents unwanted or harmful chemicals from entering the brain. They have shown that radiation exposure to a developing brain can actually damage that protection system, which means that unwanted chemicals can now enter. There are several other reasons for this. So this could include a modern diet. It could include other modern ways of living. We are increasingly finding very often that there are some communities where Within the country itself, there is a very little autism, but when they immigrate and are in other countries, the incidence goes up very much higher. So maybe this is a change from the natural cultural diets, ways of living that are causing this. So we don't have any one reason. There could be several reasons for this. And there was one very interesting reason, research study which was done in India, in Bangalore, where one doctor actually studied several thousand mothers with children with autism and compared them to data from mothers who didn't have children, and found that almost 100% of the mothers who had children with autism during their pregnancy had gone through severe emotional trauma or depression, anxiety. And in fact, he showed me the data. He had come to meet me. Several of them had contemplated suicide. Not attempted, but the thought had come, which means that the emotional health of the mother is very, very important, because when you're stressed, a chemical is a hormone is released in the body called adrenaline, and then that causes vasoconstriction. It narrows the blood vessels. So when it narrows the blood vessels, it could possibly be narrowing the blood vessel to the child's blood supply as well. So there's so many reasons. There is also a lot of work having done with low levels of certain vitamins, hormones, etc.
What would you like to share with the audience watching this video clip right now?
The first thing is to families who have a child with special needs, and this could be autism, it could be cerebral palsy, it could be intellectual disability, it could be Down syndrome. Uh, what I want you to know is that there is science, there is medical technology that is available right now, okay, that can help your children. That this technology is very simple, it's very safe, and it's very effective. All the work that we have done is published in medical journals. These are called peer reviewed medical journals. What is the importance of that? When something is published in a peer reviewed medical journal, it means the journal's editorial board and two or three independent reviewers have evaluated the data and then permitted its publication. So it's an authentication of the data. So we have presently 106 scientific papers on different aspects of cellular therapy, in particular for neurological conditions. So all our work is published in scientific journals. We ourselves have treated 15,000 patients from 103 different countries. So from all over the world, patients have come to our hospital to take this treatment, and they have benefited dramatically and significantly. So, what I want you to know is to have hope, because I believe that can be nothing more emotionally shattering than our children having any medical problem. But when the medical problem is of the brain, it becomes even more so. And when your medical doctors tell you nothing can be done, that is even more devastating. So, because the thought in most parents is, okay, we look after our children as long as we are there. What about after us? Uh, so now I want you to know that there is a simple, safe medical treatment that has been scientifically validated, the results of which have been published in scientific journals, that can help our children. And just having this hope, keeps us going.
Does it matter whether children receive this treatment at an early stage or maybe later in life? Does it make any difference?
So our success rate actually is dependent on the age. So what we have found is that children below 5 years, we have 100% success rate, right? Then when you go down between 5 years to about 10, 11 years, it drops to about 95%. After 11 years or after puberty, the result is 90%. So the results are age dependent. So it ranges anywhere from a 98 to 100% success rate below 5, 95% between 5 and 10, and 90% below. But the only thing that I'd like to add here is our own clinical work tells us that the earlier we do the treatment, the better it is. So my suggestion is not to wait for too long, because the longer we wait, you know, the lesser will be the results. We still get results, but the results tend to be a little lesser. So the first thing is early detection, early understanding, and taking medical help early on. That's the first thing. The second thing is that understanding that there is new technology available, that is presently available in India. It is possible that once the diagnosis is made, in children who are mild, okay, they may just need rehabilitation and they may recover from that. But in those who are moderate or severe, we believe that early intervention with cell stem cell therapy and hyperbaric oxygen can help these children recover and lead independent, independent, productive lives. So, early intervention, early diagnosis, early intervention, deciding to do either only rehabilitation or combine it with cell stem cell, this is very, very important. What you have to realize is that this new treatment is based on scientific publications. It is being done in several countries all over the world. It is new. It is not something everybody is aware of. It's not something everybody may approve of, because what has happened is that cell stem cell therapy is developed more in the East. So, India, China, Korea, Japan, we are the leaders. So, because of that, there is less awareness in the Western world. But I don't think there's any reason why our children should suffer if this treatment is available. I think it should be given to them simply because it's simple, safe, and effective. And the key thing I would tell all the families of children with special needs: one, accept our children the way they are, work very solidly as a family, okay, and do not give up hope.
Are there any side effects?
So that's the beauty. There are no major side effects. So in almost 15,000 patients that we have treated, we've never seen any patients who deteriorated, worsened, become worse than before. However, there are some minor side effects. For example, 3% of our children who already have a history of epilepsy in the past, well, their epilepsy can increase or they can develop epilepsy after the treatment. But this is children who already have that history. But this is treatable with medicines, so it is manageable. It doesn't cause any deterioration. Some children, 10% of the children, get a headache or a little vomiting or a pain for 2 or 3 days after the treatment. But that happens in the hospital. Nothing happens when you go back. So basically, we can say that it is an extremely safe treatment with very minimal side effects. And if the ones that are there, they are easily treatable.
In some countries, people who are suffering with the autism spectrum, they are outcasted because people think they are crazy or even think that they are possessed. What would you tell to these families?
So the first thing was, this was an older thinking, which was more in the rural areas. We see it in several parts of Asia. We see it in several parts of Africa. And like you said, they think they are possessed. They will get witchcraft people. We've had several parents who actually told us that their families told them to actually either give the children up to an orphanage, leave the child, or they've been asked to just discard the child. But the one thing is that the mother is the one person who always holds on strongly. No mother will ever let go of her child, no matter what the problem is. So yes, this happens. This used to be very prominent several years ago. We've seen over the years this has diminished a little bit, right? Because there is a little better understanding of these problems. But now, with the availability of these new treatments, all these children can show improvement. And the improvements are very obvious. A child with autism who's not talking starts talking. And one of the most emotional things that happens with mothers, and this even gets tears to our eyes, is when moms come and tell us, a child, just last week it happened, a child who was, 7, 8 years old, who had never spoken, for the first time says, Mama, get me this. And just hearing Mama, from a child for the first time in 7, 8 years is such an emotionally overwhelming thing. The mothers just cry. Just hearing the child say, call them Mama, you can imagine what a mother must be feeling like for a child who's never called her Mama. And so these are the improvements that are really amazing. They're very visible. They're very obvious. There's no question about the fact that, they're improving. A child who's not spoken, once he starts talking, a child who cannot read and write, who starts reading and writing. And like I said, what we have found is that in all these children, there are some special qualities. And once they improve with our stem cell therapy, we can then start identifying. And we have kids who are, great with chemicals. We have great kids who are great with mechanical, repair. We have kids who do fantastic paintings. The kids who are great with music. Kids who are great with sport. You know, different, and a large number of kids have exceptional mathematical abilities. Exceptional. I mean, they can do calculation that we can't even think of. You just say just multiply some, and they will tell you the reply instantly. We have a large number of kids. You tell them, and this is very peculiar. You tell them any date in the future. You tell them 25th March, 2030, and within 2 seconds they tell you what day it is. So it's a very peculiar trait. So we have kids who, you know, we actually had a girl child from Bangalore, and after her treatment, she improved to the point that she can actually, you think of a number, think, right? She will tell you what you thought. And we've never seen this kind of stuff. So these kids have that exceptional quality. So that's what we are now doing. We are saying, let's shift to what they can do that's exceptional. And what we are finding is that when you convert this into a vocation, then they are right on top of it. They excel in it. It could be cooking, it could be, it's sometimes very diverse from what we are doing. The important thing is once these children do something, because their vision is like this, they're very focused on what they do. Our vision tends to be a 360-degree one, so there are noises and distractions. It's like, Elon Musk, he decides he wants to make a electric car. He will just do it. He will not let anything in the world stop him. He wants to send missions to space. He will do it. Right. So everything that he wants, he does it because his focus is single-minded. That's the skill set of our things that we need to actually use this, because um, I was recently overhearing a podcast from Temple Grandin, who actually said some of the greatest inventions. She actually listed some of the greatest inventions of humankind have actually come from people who had some amount of ADHD or autism, because they think differently. They think outside the box. They've got capacity to do things that we don't have. So it's important that the thought process change.
How do you see the future of India with regards to this research?
India has now become a global leader in the field of cell stem cell therapy for, in particular, for autism and other neurological disorders, because, like you just mentioned, the world's first scientific paper was published from India. It was published from us, from the Neurogen Brain and Spine Institute. uh, Now, the subsequent papers came from other countries like China and Italy and the United States. But the world's first paper on autism was published by us. Also, the world's first paper on cell therapy for intellectual disability. This was also published by us. So we are now the global leaders in the field, because the person who publishes the world's first paper, that is something that nobody can take away. There's only one person who can climb Mount Everest first, or one person who can walk on the moon first. So we have now got not just global scientific leadership, but most important, patients from all over the world are now coming to our institute. So at Neurogen Brain and Spine Institute, which is located in Navi Mumbai, we have treated patients from 103 different countries. And the very fact that parents are flying 15, 20 hours, and we've treated patients from all the 6 continents. We have patients from North America, South America, Europe, Africa, Asia, and Australia. From all over, people are coming to our country. So for us, it's a matter of great pride that our country is leading the way in regenerative medicine for autism and for neurodevelopmental disorders. The role of our Honorable Prime Minister, Sri Narendra Modi ji, one of the first very interesting things he did, which changed the entire mindset, was that he changed the nomenclature. Earlier in India, disability was officially called Viklang. Okay. And what he did was he publicly and officially changed the name to Divyang. And when he talks about it, he says that why did he do it? He said when you call somebody Viklang, you look at what they don't have. When you call somebody Divyang, you look at what is special in them. And this is very similar to our approach. And this is something the Prime Minister did personally himself. Second, the Honorable Prime Minister and his government in 2016 passed a very, very important law called the Right of Persons with Disability Act 2016. It's one of the most interesting laws, which lists 21 disabilities in which autism, cerebral palsy, muscular dystrophy are listed as separate as disabilities, and it gives the families special rights, especially in particular to education and other opportunities. So, doing these two things made a dramatic difference in the field of neurological disabilities. He has also been a strong supporter of cell stem cell therapy. In fact, when he visited Japan, he took time out from his entire schedule to visit Professor Yamanaka, who won the Nobel Prize for stem cell work, for his work on iPSCs. And for a prime minister to take time out to go to a stem cell facility is very unique. Also, in the Indian Parliament, he made a very passionate speech about stem cells. I'm very fortunate. In fact, I feel I'm blessed that the Honorable Prime Minister has written a message and an introduction for a book that I have authored. So there is a book that I've written on muscular dystrophy where I talk about stem cells, and the Honorable Prime Minister has written a forward to it. He writes a very interesting forward. It's beautiful. You know what he writes? He says, the birth of a child is something very special to a parent. It's something which brings joy and happiness. But when this child develops a medical problem, the same thing turns into a sort of nightmare. Very beautifully, he mentions. And then he talks of the role of science and technology in bringing this together. Muscular dystrophy is a condition very close to the Honorable Prime Minister. In fact, in his Man Ki Baat radio program, he had dedicated a separate section just to speak of muscular dystrophy. So we are very honored that, when right at the top, there is inspiration and motivation to develop this field, it actually gives us more energy and more courage to go on. So, with his blessings and with the work that doctors and scientists from India are doing, India is positioned now to become a global superpower in the field of regenerative medicine, which uses cell stem cell therapy.
Dr. Alok Sharma, thank you so much for this amazing interview.
Thank you so much, Amrita, for having us over. I'd also like to thank the W Foundation, for not only just having us over, but for all the activities that you are undertaking. So, in conclusion, what I'd like to state is that all the parents who are listening to this, who have children with special needs, they need to not give up hope, because hope is something very, very important. And a summary of everything I've said is: one, that early diagnosis and detection is important. Two, early intervention is important. This intervention in milder cases could be in the form of rehabilitation or other medical treatments. And in cases of moderate and severe, maybe the use of cell stem cells or other integrative treatments like hyperbaric oxygen. Like I said, it's a matter of pride for us that India is a global leader in this field. And from our point of view, we welcome people from all over the world to come and avail of this. We're also very happy to share our research, our technology, uh, with people from all across the world. So, we like to collaborate with different countries. And as part of this, in fact, the government of Bahamas has invited us to set up a center for cell stem cell therapy for autism. We'll be very happy in future to work with the Netherlands and to work with people from other European countries, because we want our children from across the world to be able to benefit from this treatment, whose genesis origin is actually from India. So thank you once again. Thank you to the Damru Foundation, and thank you. It's been a wonderful morning having this lovely discussion with you.
Thank you so much for coming here and sharing this valuable knowledge with us. It is so valuable and so important that this is reaching the homes of people who are dealing with children who are suffering with the autism spectrum. I understand that your life might be difficult and that you might feel that there's no light at the end of the tunnel. But now we know that there is light and there is hope, and you can do something about it. Your child might improve. So get in touch with Dr. Alok Sharma. The details are shown below in the description box. Get in touch with him and inform about the options and the possibilities for this treatment. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Amrita Tiwari. I am the chair of Damru Foundation International. Stay tuned. Jai Shri Ram.
Jai Shri Ram.